Welcome to the webinar, How to Create a Value Proposition That Sells. I am Mary Beth Kosmeski with Red Zone Marketing, and I'm really looking forward to sharing this webinar with you today. About is this idea of a value proposition. Now, the problem with the value proposition is, for the most part, that they don't usually work. And if they don't usually work, it's a problem, but it's a pretty big problem for a lot of reasons. And the first reason is, well, if you're a financial advisor on this webinar today, you know that top advisors, and yourself, and you're probably a top advisor, you get most of your new business from referrals. And if you get most of your new business from referrals, I mean, we've done a study that I'm showing on the screen right now. We've done it since 2003, this particular study of looking at advisors who are fast growing advisors, those who are bringing in a lot of new assets, a lot of new clients year in and year out, between 20 and 25+% growth every year. And so we're looking at, for those high producing advisors, where are they getting their new business from? And most of it, as you can see, is from referrals. It's not the only way, but it's most of the way. And also, there's been other studies, if you don't believe mine. In fact, this one was with Invesco and R.A. Prince, who said that more than 85% of new assets for top performing financial advisors come from current client referrals. And so you go, that's great. I already know that. I'm already doing that. But there is an issue with this if referrals are the way that we're building our business. And even if we decide that we're going to out and do, a whole bunch of other prospecting, the problem is still the same. Because the problem is that, especially in the idea of financial advisors in this particular industry, there is a lot of negativity. If you look at the headlines right now, there's negativity everywhere about what financial advisors do. And you say, well, what's the significance of that? Well, if we're relying on other people to tell our story, because that's how we get referrals, we have an issue, because the word that is spreading around about financial advisors, I mean, if you think about it, the NCAA, the basketball scandal that's happening right now, sort of in the middle of it, is a financial advisor. There's just negativity everywhere you look, and it's not you and it's not your fault, but people hear these things and it affects and impacts how we get referrals and how willing your clients are to talk about you. So when we think about the fees that we charge, and for those who are financial advisors on this call, a lot of the emphasis has been moving from a transactional business to a fee-based business. Well, when clients are asked, in fact, those that have more than $1 million invested, J.D. Powers found out that they said they don't want to pay fees. If the choice is to not pay fees or to pay fees, I prefer not to pay fees. Well, I think they're asking the wrong question, because the question isn't, do you want to pay fees? The question is, if you can get it for free or you pay for something, which would you rather have? And they go, well, we'd prefer it if it was for free. But the thing of it is that if they knew what they were getting for the fees that they were paying, they would pay it. The problem is, do people know what they are paying the fees for? And that gets to our value. What is our value, so that we can describe it in detail? And once we describe our value, people will not question the fees that they're being charged. So I think what we need to do is change the conversation. If we are going to have a value proposition that sells, then we need to think about changing our conversation. Because if we cannot describe with succinct detail why someone should pay us a fee, then we have an issue. Because if we can't explain it, then guess what? Our clients may not be able to explain it. And if you're not sure, ask your clients, hey, I know you referred someone to me. What did you say when you referred them to me? And a lot of times they're not saying the greatest things in the world, but people are still coming to you. What if they could say something better? What if we could describe our value a little bit better? So the first thing that we need to do in sort of the intro to this presentation is we have to be able to capture people's attention. Today, the average attention span is 8 seconds in the United States. I'm not sure we are capturing people's attention. I'm not sure that the words we are using today are better than the words we used 10 years ago when we didn't have an ADD society where no one is paying attention to anybody because everyone is paying attention to their phones and what's happening in their own lives. And we've become this sort of narcissistic society in some ways. How do you break through that? As a financial advisor, how do you break through that? We've got to capture the attention. And in fact, it's more than just capturing the attention. It's figuring out what is causing them to not want to pay attention to us. So the biggest mistake that people make in marketing, and it's most people make this mistake in marketing, but financial advisors really are making this mistake on a fairly regular basis. The biggest mistake is that we do not message ourselves properly to the other person. And who's the other person? The other person is the person that you want to do business with. Are they interested by your message? And if you don't believe me, I'll give you a case in point. You go to a business function and someone says, hey, what do you do? And you say, well, I'm a financial advisor. Does that make them want to speak with you more or less? Now, if you think about that, the answer is less, and it's less almost every time. And the problem with that is that we're there at the business function to attract people to us. And the only thing we're doing by the power of our own voice is to repel them from us. We have a messaging problem. And the problem isn't something that you've created, but the solution just must be yours. If we are to capture the attention of more prospects, if we are to retain our clients, we have got to be able to tell our story simply, concisely, and better than we have done before. And I think it starts with giving them what they want. See, a lot of times we talk about what people need. In fact, in financial services, we're really good at uncovering need and figuring out, all the things that you might need that I might be able to help you with. But the problem with a lot of the need items is that they don't actually want them. Well, asset allocation, diversification, financial planning. People aren't clamoring for these things. They're not desperate for them. The reason they come to a financial advisor, in fact, a lot of times when someone comes to a financial advisor, they come because they're in a transition, something that is happening to them immediately. Right now, I'm retiring. Right now, I've been laid off from my job. Right now, I have a health situation. Right now, I've got something going on. Someone passed away in my family, and they come to the financial advisor for help. What if they came to the financial advisor long before they had a critical situation? And the only way we can get them to do that is by talking about what they want, not what they need. Now, of course, they need all of the things that I mentioned. They need asset allocation, and they need financial planning, and they need diversification, and they need a 401k, and they need all of these things. They just don't want them. They want other things. So as we're thinking about this, what do they actually want? Now, I recall a time when I was walking down the streets in New York City. This was last summer. It was a Wednesday in New York City at 12 noon. And I am rushing from one meeting to another meeting. And as I am walking down the streets of New York, I pass this placard that happens to be standing up on the sidewalk. And I passed it, and then I come back and I think, what did I just see? What was that? And it says beer special, buy one beer at twice the price and your second beer is free. So I thought, well, this is some value proposition. So I pull out of my bag my phone and I take a picture of this. And you can sort of see my shadow in the middle there as I'm taking a picture of this. And as I'm taking a picture, I glance into the restaurant and guess what I see? This is a restaurant that's packed at noon on a Wednesday in New York City. The bar is standing room only. People are waiting in line to sit down and eat. And I'm thinking, is it the value proposition? Nah, I think what it really is that if you think about going to a place that would put a sign out like this, you're probably going to get a laugh. Then there's a lot of places in New York City that weren't packed on that particular day. This place was. And it probably wasn't the beer special, and it probably wasn't the food. It was the culture. I think one of the things that your clients that are already your clients love most about you is the culture, is the things that they feel when they do business with you, when they come into your office. Sometimes people will come into your office when they don't even have an appointment to grab a cup of coffee and just say hello. And you think to yourself, what do I have here? What you have is an incredible culture that people really like. How do we share these things before they become our client for a year and kind of get it? How do we share what they actually want before they come in to see us? So if you think about what's unique and compelling about you, I think that there are probably fewer things than we think that are unique and compelling, because it's not the product typically. It's probably not the price. It's probably not the services. It's probably not the investment process. I was meeting with a financial advisor at a very large firm last week, and I said, what is unique about your team, about your firm? And he said, well, we've got an incredible investment process. And he started talking about the factors they look at and the indices and how they make all of these decisions and how they manage the investment managers. And I'm thinking, well, is that actually unique? And he said, oh, it's very unique. But you see, the client doesn't actually believe that that's unique, because if I'm investing $5 million with you, I hope you have an investment process. I hope you're managing these things in this particular way. I don't know to the client that sounds really super unique. And so the problem with that is that we not only have to be unique, we have to be unique to the other person. We have to say something that they will think, yes, wow, this is definitely different. And I think that that's only one thing. I don't think it's your investment process. I think we can differentiate based on these things, but we're not going to entirely differentiate because they really sound the same. It's you. 80% of the reason that someone decides to do business with you is actually you. And so if we think about the biggest differentiator in our practice, it is actually the people. And do we talk about the people? Do we have just a simple bio, maybe even not put anything personal about the people? The people are the culture. The people are the reason that a client stays with you. In fact, I've heard from advisors, boy, if my head assistant, if she ever leaves, I could lose clients. They love her. They love the people. And so if 80% of the reason we choose to do business with a firm is because of the people in the firm, we've got to think about how we're presenting the people, how we're presenting the things that are truly the most unique. And I believe that there are 3 separate and distinct types of value statements. So we think of a value proposition as sort of an all-in. Our value proposition is on our website. It's our elevator statement. It's our fee discussion. And it's really not. In the definition that I'd like to propose to you today, an elevator statement is one way of describing your value. That is a very different way of describing your value than your value proposition. Your value proposition must prove out your fees. After I hear your value proposition, I know what I'm paying for. I know your value. And then finally, we've got different marketing messaging that we'll put on our website, on our social media, and different places and marketing materials that we might hand to someone. And so those are 3 distinct ways of discussing your value. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's start off with the first thing, which is a simple, repeatable statement of value. It's what I call an elevator statement. And the reason I don't necessarily use elevator statement, I use it because you know what I'm talking about when I say elevator statement. You're in an elevator, you've got a couple floors up. Can you, in a few seconds, describe your value? But I have seen so many elevator statements be so gimmicky, and people don't like them, and they think, I've tried that before, I don't really want to do that. But if you think about the actual context of an elevator statement, it should be something that is simple, repeatable, and has some redeeming value. And so let's talk about a sort of a methodology for doing this. And if you think about a SRSV, simple, repeatable statement of value formula or methodology, it starts with number 1, focusing your message on a target, not focusing on everyone. Number 2, it's describing something that they want that you have. Number 3, it's sharing how you are different than most. And 4, it's having some kind of a story or an example that proves it. So let's go through an example of this. The first example, and this is from a real life financial advisor who works with a lot of business owners, when he's at a networking event or some kind of a function where there's business owners, instead of saying, I'm a financial advisor, we work with individuals and families and businesses, because you wouldn't want to miss anybody, he says this. He says, I'm a financial advisor at XYZ company. We work with many business owners. In fact, we've helped about 60 business owners to date successfully sell their business and move on to the next phase of their lives. Now, there's only 2 things that business owners want: to make money now and to eventually sell their business or pass it on to the next generation. And so if those are the only two things that ultimately business owners want, they're not looking for a 401k. You go, well, I've got a 401k. I can sit down and talk to you about, establishing a 401k at your firm or getting a new 401k. They're not interested in that. They don't want anything to do with that. They will put it off on other people. It's why the closing cycle for a 401k is so incredibly long, because they do not want it. What do they want? They want to sell their business. And if you've actually helped 60 business owners successfully sell their business, they want to know more. This is going to be something that's not repelling. It's something that's interesting. If you're at the business function to attract people to you, our words have got to do that. So it's just thinking about that want. Now let's break this down. So if you look at the formula that we used before, focusing your message on a target, business owners, because you're standing in front of a business owner. And if you don't know who you're standing in front of, you can ask them. Because I think we might want to have a pocket full of simple, repeatable statements of value. And then he's describing what he offers, guidance in selling a business. Now, it's not the only thing that he offers, but if he says, I'm a financial advisor, period, they think he does investments and they're not really that interested in that, and the conversation is over. And then he shares how he's different than most. He talks about things that they actually want, and he doesn't talk about things that they don't want that he might actually still offer. And then he has a story that proves it. And the story is, hey, we've done this with 60 clients already. And so that's a story that's compelling. It's not, hey, I'm thinking about helping people sell their business. I've actually done it. And so this may not be your story, and this may not be the way that you would describe something that you do. But if you can think about, capture, and quantify that want, that value that they really, really want, then we've got a simple, repeatable statement of value. So here's another one. This is a financial advisor in the Chicago area, and he says, I'm a financial advisor with XYZ Company. We specialize in working with corporate executives getting ready to retire from Abbott Labs. Now, it's pretty specific. And I said to him the first time I heard this, well, do you say this to everybody? And he says, well, actually, I do, because I want to be put into a box. And the box is that I work with executives. But he said, guess what the only thing that's memorable about this particular statement? Abbott Labs? He said, absolutely, it's Abbott Labs. It's blah, 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 Abbott Labs. Oh, you work with people at Abbott. And now it's memorable. It's not so much what you do, it's who you do it for, right? So it could be what you do if that's really what they want. But in a lot of cases, working with corporate executives, helping them retire, it's what a lot of advisors say. But when you get to the specifics, that's when we get down to business. So again, breaking this one down, focus your messaging on a target, describing what they want that you offer, helping them retire, or you could say financial independence, because a lot of executives want to get out from under. They don't want to work till they're 70. It's very stressful. They want to leave at some point when they're ready, and they want to be ready. So how are you different than most? Understand executives, obviously works with a lot of them. And the entire simple, repeatable statement of value actually proves this out, because you're willing to say that you work with people at a particular company. You're willing to prove that out. And somebody might say, oh, well, who do you work with? You better be ready to say whoever it is that you work with, or be able to share, well, I work with, it's confidential, but I work with people that work out of this office, or whatever that might be. So let's talk about the second kind of value statement, which is the value proposition. Now, the value proposition needs to prove your fees. That is the main thing that a value proposition needs to do. It's not some quick statement you put up on the website. It's not something that you say when you're meeting somebody for the first time at a business function. It is what proves out your fees. And so I'm going to share with you an example of a financial advisor that was having some incredible difficulty in his business. Now, he manages more than $1 billion, a couple billion actually, and he shows that his firm is a financial planning firm. That's how he puts his firm out there. We're a financial planning firm. He has lots of CFPs that work at his firm. And he was finding that this was working great. They were doing all this planning, and then they were helping people with a lot of money be able to retire successfully. And it was wonderful, until the people that were retired figured that they already had their plan. They didn't need the plan anymore. And so they actually pulled their money and went someplace else. And he saw a couple $1 million leave, then he saw a couple more $1 million leave, and then he realized we have a trend going on here. And he thought, well, our differentiator has always been that we do planning. But the problem is that he didn't explain it in a way that was really understandable to the clients, because they thought that the planning was done and now it was just paying for the investments. But that wasn't what it was at all. And so he decided that he would start explaining what he does a little bit differently and how he continues to do those things. And so I'll share this example with you. And by the way, this example is something that is not just, it's not a pre-printed brochure. It's not something that's all slicked up. It is an actual authentic presentation where he's writing words down as he is describing what it is that he does for the prospect or the client. And it might not seem, well, that's not very professional to be writing. I don't have good handwriting. It doesn't matter, because here's the reality. If you talk about what you do, they will be about a 30% retention. If you talk about what you do and write it down, so now they're seeing you write it down, they might even start taking notes to themselves, it goes up, retention goes up to over 70%. So 30%, you just talking about what you do, which is why people forget what you do all the time, or 70% because you've written it down and you've done it in a very simple way. And so instead of saying we do 1,050 things, he says simply, there are 3 main things that we do. And he says the first thing that we do, now meanwhile, he's writing this into the first circle. He says the first thing we do is outcome-based planning, and he writes that down. And then he writes down the things that he does for and because of outcome-based planning. And he tells them why these things are important, why they should be important to the particular client or prospect. And then he says, now the value of what we do under outcome-based planning is worth about 1% of your assets under care. And he writes the number 1 down at the bottom. Then he says, now the second thing that we do is investment management. And he literally writes down investment management. And then he writes down the kind of investment management that they do. We have institutional access to institutional research, talks about asset allocation, tells them why asset allocation should be important to them, talks about the triggers. If the market goes down, this is what we do. This is why we do it. And this is how we will communicate with you both about performance and when the market goes down, and everything is laid out. And he says, now what we do under investment management is worth about 1% of your assets under care. And he writes the number 1 down. Then he says, now the third thing that we do, and it's really what we bring to the table, is intellectual capital. He says, let me share with you a little bit about what we do, what our team does for our prospects and clients. And he says, we don't have just an average team. Let me tell you about the credentials that we have on our team. And he doesn't say, hey, we've got a CFA, we've got a CFP. He takes the time to explain what a CFA is, and that only 1% of financial advisors have this, and why they have someone to help them manage the portfolio on their team, and what a CFP is, and how long it takes to get that certification, and what that person does on the team. And he talks about his own experience. And instead of talking about experience like a lot of financial advisors do, well, I've got 30 years of experience, or I've got 250 years of combined experience on my team. And that doesn't actually say anything to anyone, except maybe that you're old. He says, I have 20 plus years of experience on this team. And he says, the one thing that I do, because I have a lot of experience doing it, he says, I have been through 13 downturns of the market. I'm pretty good at protecting client assets. And he talks about how he's done that and how he manages doing that. And then he talks about the Vanguard study, or the Russell study, or the Morningstar study. There's lots of them out there that actually proves out the value of financial advisor. And he pulls the report out and he shows it to them. And he says, now, this is why we do what we do. This is why our team does this. And he says, now, arguably, intellectual capital is worth at least 1% of your assets under care. And he writes the number 1 down. Then he asks the key question. He says, do you have any questions about our value? And guess what the answer is? Every single time. No, I don't have any questions about your value. I get what it is that you do. Now, these may not be the 3 things that you do, and this may not be the way you present it. And it doesn't actually matter if you're a financial advisor, or if you're a wholesaler, or if you're somebody that's not even in the industry. Being able to take everything that you do and put it into 3 categories. People can get their arms around it. They can figure out what that is. They can remember it. And that's the key. Because if your client can remember the 3 things that you do, guess who they can share that with? their friends, their neighbors. This is actually one of the best referral tools that I have ever seen because it allows your clients to be able to go and tell others about it. Now, he doesn't just share this with prospects. Every single time he sits down with the client, he says, let me share with you, let me remind you the 3 things that we've been doing for you. And he takes the time to do that because it's too important not to, because they're not really paying all that much attention. And now they are, because he's writing it down, he's talking about it, and he's sharing. Basically, this is why you pay me a fee. This is the value that we bring to the table. And they get it and they understand it. And eventually they can share it almost verbatim with someone else, which is such a powerful tool. And you could present it in different ways. You could have 3 things that you do, they're pillars. You could have it, presented in all sorts of different ways. I've seen someone actually present it on a cocktail napkin because you just do 1, 2, 3. And it's not an elevator statement again, but it can be, as you're getting into a more in-depth discussion, more explanation about what it is that you do that's more memorable and more absorbable than the way that typical financial advisors talk about their value. So the third thing we'll talk about today is your compelling marketing messaging. And this is the kind of messaging that you might use on your website, that you might use in printed marketing materials, in a PDF that you might send out to somebody on social media. And so what's the key with this? Well, the key is that we have to say something interesting. I think that we've been caught into this trap that there's compliance in financial services. And because there is compliance in financial services, we can't say anything interesting. And it's simply not true. And I'll show you how it can be true that we can use things that are interesting. But first, I'll share this with you. This is not interesting or compelling. This is typical. It's typical that we put a financial website up there that shares something that doesn't say anything about anything. And this is their main home page, Our Business is People. Well, I would hope your business is people if you are investing people's money and you're meeting with people and you're dealing with people. People are your business, but that's not exactly saying anything that's compelling or different. And a lot of websites say these things. We work with individuals and families and businesses. It basically says that you work with everyone in the entire world, and it doesn't say anything about why I should be paying attention to this or spend more than 30 seconds on your website. So here's an example of one that literally stops you in your tracks. If you go to this website, the main headline is meticulous. Wealth management is a beautiful thing. When was the last time you heard meticulous described with a financial advisor? And how about a beautiful thing? So if you think about this, it's a combination of different words that stop people and go, I wonder what that is. And if you read on, the entire website is written in this beautiful way that shares value differently. Because if we say the same things the way everyone else says it, it goes in one ear and out the other. That's what I expected. That's what I thought. Here's another one. We changed everything, front and center on the website. Now, boy, if I'm going to this website and I've been referred to them and I'm thinking about coming in to meet with this firm, because by the way, that's when people go to your website. They don't sort of randomly search engine optimization find your website. They find your website because someone told them, hey, this is the firm I'm using and you should go check them out. And even if you were able to get your client to describe how wonderful you are, well, there's 3 main things that she does, and however they might explain all of the things that you do. Once they get to the website, that's got to be as good as you are, because your online reputation today supersedes your regular reputation. And so somebody gets to your website and they go, it's what I thought. And by the way, why are they looking at you online? They're looking at you online to give themselves an out. I don't really want to come in and meet with a financial advisor. I've got to get rid of my other financial advisor. I've got to pull all this paperwork together. It's kind of a pain in the rear. I don't want to share all the mistakes I made in my financial life with another person, because I don't care how wealthy you are. You've made mistakes in your financial life. And so say something that's interesting to get them to stick around a little bit on the website. If you look at one analytic on your website, look at your bounce rate. Your bounce rate is how many times people come to your website and leave without going to any other page of the site. which means there wasn't anything interesting on that first page to get them to do anything. And we want them to read about us. We've got to get them to go to the bio page. We've got to get them to go to the about page and read about the team. So we changed everything. Now, whether they changed everything or not, they're willing to say it. They're putting themselves out. And you know what? They're making a big statement. And if they're willing to make this big statement, I'm probably willing to read on a little bit. And here's another one I love. Our clients are uncommonly successful. How often do you see something like this? See, oftentimes what we do see is we work with high net worth individuals. We work with ultra high net worth individuals. Individuals don't describe themselves as high net worth or ultra high net worth. But if you're working with people who are actually really successful, why not just say that? Uncommonly successful. And then they describe who they work with. And it is such a great way of getting someone's attention, because if you really are successful, you go, well, maybe that is me. I am pretty successful. And they can be very specific because they know who they work with. And how about LinkedIn? If you go to anyone's LinkedIn site, the summary section of the LinkedIn site falls right underneath the picture and the headline. And it is the most important place on the LinkedIn profile because it shares something about you. And they actually want to know something about you. In fact, people will go to your LinkedIn profile before they go to your website, because your LinkedIn profile is more like your resume and your website's more like your marketing material. And if I'm going to find an honest if I'm looking for honest information, I'm probably going to go to LinkedIn profile, and then I'll probably go to the website too. And that's typically, statistically, how people do it. So if you're thinking about your LinkedIn profile, take a look at it and see, does it say anything that's interesting? Does it talk about you? Or does it start off with, I've been in this business for 25 years, I've won a bazillion awards, and I'm, really good at what I do. And I understand that that's important for credibility's sake. If you've won awards, you have certifications and all those kinds of things. But that's exactly what they expected to see. That's exactly what they expected to see. What they didn't expect to see is you. So tell a story about you. Tell a story that talks about why you are in this business. In fact, that is the best way to describe how you are unique. Why are you in this business? Well, I'm in this business because of something that happened when I was a kid. My father and my uncle were very wealthy, renowned physicians, and we grew up very wealthy. And then, this is the summary section right here, and then my father and my uncle took all of the family money and invested into one steel company in Pittsburgh, and we literally lost everything. So he went from rich to poor, and everything that happened to his family, and the devastation and the divorce and everything that was terrible that happened because of this bad financial mistake. And he said when he was a kid, if there's one thing I'm going to do, it's going to be to help other families avoid the mistakes that my family had to go through. He didn't get good advice. He didn't know it was to be a financial advisor, but it's actually what he became. And he didn't want to tell the story because he didn't feel the story made him a better financial advisor. But what the story actually makes him is a real person, a person that's not going to judge. One of the biggest fears with wealthy people who have not seen a financial advisor is that they will be judged. And physicians are top in line because physicians know everything. They are supposed to know everything. And if they made a bad business deal, which sometimes they do, they don't want to come in and share it with somebody else. It's like admitting defeat. But if they look at a LinkedIn profile and see a real person that they could come in and see, it's interesting how much that might change. And in this particular example, it has changed things for him. So think about how you're writing out everything that's online about you. Is it the best presentation of who you are? Is it concise? And by the way, the only place that does not have to be concise is your actual bio on your website, because people will read and read and read about you. They won't read and read and read on the homepage or any of the other services page, put graphics on there, but they will absolutely read the bios because they want to know who these people are, and put something personal in there. Make it about you. Again, and I've said this twice now, I'll say it the third time, 80% of the reason that people decide to do business with you is you. And if we're going to differentiate and provide this value, it has to start with the people on the team, starting with you. And if you think about social media, the other thing that we have to really be concerned about is posting something interesting. Now, how do we know if it's interesting or not? Well, it's very easy to find out if something's interesting because we simply have to go to the post that we posted last week and see, did anyone view it? Did anyone like it? Did anyone share it with anyone else? Did anyone make any comments about it? Because if they didn't do any of those things, then we actually don't have something that's, quote, interesting. And so if you want to make something interesting, we've got to start with thinking about, well, what do people want? Do they want to hear about whatever that you're going to put out there? And you might think that, hey, people are going to love this. But a lot of times the pre-done content is not all that interesting. One of the things that we can do is change the headline, make it sound more interesting, like people will actually want to read it. Like, how do I get ready to retire is not very interesting. I'm like, oh boy, I got to read this. This is incredible. You have to have something that is interesting. And by the way, Facebook has just changed their algorithm, and they did this because of the election and some of the things that they were being criticized for, but they want to only have content, highlight content, prioritize content that's being posted on Facebook that is actually engaging. Meaning that if you're posting a bunch of content, but no one's engaging in it, they think of you kind of as a spammer, and your content will not appear in people's news feeds. If you have content that you're posting that people are liking and clicking on and sharing with others and making comments on, you are interacting with other people, and that's what they want. They don't want static content, they want interactive content. And that only means that it has to be just a little bit more interesting, perhaps, than it was before. See, success is really about executing on these red zone moments, the things that are right in front of us. We have value. It's not that we don't have value. It's how do we categorize it, package it, and explain it to somebody? How do we attract someone's attention in just a few seconds? How do we write something that's short and concise and yet meaningful because maybe we're using some different words? And so I'd ask you to start to think about how you will do this. And I believe that you can do it yourself. I believe that on your team, if you've got someone that could write, you take some time to break down the value and figure this out. Now, for those of you that are thinking, well, that's great, but I don't have somebody on my team, I'm not sure how I would do it, I'd like to share with you how Red Zone Marketing does it. But for those of you that know you're going to do it yourself, you do not have to stay on for the rest of this webinar, but I will share with those of you that are interested how we help other people do this. Again, you can do it yourself, but I will share with you how Red Zone Marketing does it. So the first thing that we do is we take a look at, and I'm going to pull this up here so you can see it. We take a look at what is valuable with you. What is actually your simple, repeatable statements of value? And in fact, for this particular package, we will actually write 3 simple, repeatable statements of value. Because let's say you've got 3 niches, maybe it's business owners, maybe it's executives, maybe it's physicians, maybe it's something totally different. We'll help you come up with those simple, repeatable statements of value and write them. Now, how do we do that? Because I will personally, or somebody on my team, will interview you and your team to find out and really delve into this value. It's not just simply writing something up with good grammar. It's actually getting in depth to figure out what that value is. And once we figure out what the value is, we will write up the 3 simple, repeatable statements of value. And we will also help you with that fee discussion. If you want a graphic of some sort, if you want to have something that describes what you do in a different way, we will help you do all of this. And we will help you do all of it until you get it through compliance. So if this takes us a week, if it takes us 2 weeks, if it takes us 6 weeks, that's how long it will take to get this done for you and get it done the way you love it and the way the compliance loves it. Now, the second thing that I will present to you as another way that we work with financial advisors is we take a look at the website and the social media, and we actually write that for you. So we take a look at everything that, again, what is your value? What are the things that you're doing that are valuable? What do we want people to know when they come to your website? What do we want them to walk away with? How can we get them to click into your website and find out more? How can we put a call to action on your website? We do the complete marketing messaging for the website. meaning that we will lay out what the website map should be, every single page of the site. A lot of times we're using you guys are already using template sites. If you're using a custom designer or not, we can help you with the design if you would like that. But most of the time, the hardest part is not the design of the site, because there's all sorts of templates we can plug into, and good templates today. The key is, what are the words we're using to attract someone's attention? And then we also take that through to the social media sites, writing up the LinkedIn profiles, being able to make sure there's a good company business profile on Facebook or on LinkedIn or Twitter. And the third thing that we do is really the combination of all of these things. Now, we do strategic marketing and lots of other types of marketing, but as we're talking simply about these value propositions and these value statements and making sure that you've got this, again, you can do this yourself, but if in the event that you would not like to take the time to do it yourself, but you'd like to hire someone to do it, this is what we can do. And so option 3 is basically just an elevator statement, the value proposition with the graphic, or elevator statements rather, the marketing messaging for your website, social media sites. It's a complete overhaul of your main marketing messaging. And we do this all the time for financial advisors. We've got lots of examples of the work that we've done and how it's been proven to actually make a difference in bringing in new business. And sometimes it's just the tweaks or the small changes that you make in your business. It doesn't have to be that you're overhauling everything and deciding that you're going to change everything you're doing in marketing. It's just getting a little bit better with the things that you're already doing. So if you'd like to reach out to us, you can reach out at redzonemarketing.com. You can go to our website. info@redzonemarketing.com is our website, or is our email address, or you can always call 847-367-4066. I look forward to talking with you and seeing you, and hopefully being able to help you in any way that I can message yourself better. Thank you.